In this week's video, I'm an embarrassing uncle, we miss a train and then catch the wrong one, and a slightly porky man runs in a kilt. Welcome to Scotland Unplugged, and a road trip I've been meaning to do for a while. Every time I get to Fort William or Glenfinnan, I stare at the map, wondering what's beyond. The road to the Isles, or the A830 to give it its boring technical name, is only part of the original road to the Isles, a historical droving route. The bit you can drive today between Fort William and Mallock was originally constructed by Thomas Telford in the early 19th century. It follows the path of the West Highland line, the one with the Jacobite Steam Train. I took my nephew Leo and we started early. We drove through the heart of the country, pausing only for the inevitable dive into the green welly stop for coffee. Then we set off for Rannoch Moor, and the kind of massive skies and early morning light the camera can never quite capture. Then we saw the sign for Glenetiv and couldn't resist a run to the Skyfall Viewpoint, even if we didn't have an Aston Martin to pose beside. Having got that out of the way, we went to our first destination. The Lagangar hut is known more famously by another name.
This is the wee White House in Glencoe. In recent years it's become an icon and a star of social media, sitting under the ominous shadow of Buckle Etive Morar. But what's the story? It started life as an 18th century crofter's cottage. In 1935, the National Trust for Scotland took over Glencoe, and in 1946, the Scottish Mountaineering Club took over the Lagangar hut. These days, it's a bunkhouse for climbers and you can go and stay there, although it might be just a tiny bit haunted.
We had one more stop to do on our way north.
This is the Old Military Road in Glencoe. It was built in the early 18th century by General Wade in the wake of the 1715 Jacobite Uprising, and allowed the British Army to access the Highlands easily, or as easily as anyone can.
These days it's part of the West Highland Way, and this stretch opens out onto one of the best views of Glencoe.
It is pretty amazing. This is Leo's first time here. I've been here a couple of times myself and it's easy to forget just how amazing it is, especially on a day like today when it's all autumnal and you've got sort of faint traces of purple and brown and green and the blue sky, and yeah, it's a little bit of a kind of a scenery overdose almost, which is a pretty absurd complaint.
We drove on, past the Three Sisters of Glencoe and into the impossibly big view. Glencoe always takes me by surprise, just with its sheer scale. We carried on up the west coast until we hit Fort William and the real road to the Isles. We tried to stop at Glenfinnan, but there was a bit of a problem. There was literally nowhere to park because everyone was waiting for the Jacobite Steam Train. Glenfinnan has become a bit of a victim of its own success. Even private roads and laybys have no parking signs. So we gave in and drove on, looking for something I've wanted to see for a while.
This behind me is Loch Nanoom. I hope I pronounced that properly. But this is the Princess Cairn. This marks the spot where on the 20th of September 1746, Charles Edward Stuart, aka Bonnie Prince Charlie, left Scotland.
Following his defeat at the Battle of Culloden on the 16th of April, he had a £30,000 price on his head. That's about £6 million in today's money.
But it says a lot about the loyalty of his followers that nobody actually turned him in. He sailed out of this sea loch on the 20th of September on a French frigate, never to return to Scotland, although he did go to London in disguise.
In 1750 he visited to try and kindle a fresh uprising, and even converted from Catholicism to the Church of England. There were very few takers though, and he soon returned to France. As places for a last glimpse of Scotland go, it could have been worse. We pushed on to Malig and the end of the road to the Isles. This is where you board the ferry to Skye and Knoydart and some of the smaller islands, and it's busy. But we weren't staying, so we made our way back to a beach I've always wanted to see.
These are the silver sands of Morar. They're not looking particularly silvery at the moment, but trust me, when the light changes, they really do. And the light changes quite a lot up here. If you know your 1980s Scottish-based movies well, you'll know that a certain famous scene was filmed between a Spanish-Egyptian character with a Scottish accent and a Scottish character with a French accent. I'll give you a clue. It starts with an H and ends with an Highlander. The quickening scene was filmed just over there, but I can't get to it because, to be honest, I'm not that keen to get my knees wet. Pretty impressive. Who needs a viaduct anyway? It does make you want to do strange things though.
Having ticked that off my bucket list, I decided to have another crack at Glenfinnan.
So, at long last, maybe the most famous bit of our road trip today is behind me over there, the Glenfinnan Viaduct. This is Glenfinnan. Yes, Harry Potter buzzed it in a Ford Anglia, but it's way more impressive than that. It was built as part of the West Highland line. It's a bit busy because of Potter, and it looks at home in its landscape, but it's actually made of concrete, built by Sir Robert McAlpine, aka Concrete Bob. He was only 28 at the time. For years there were rumours of a horse and cart falling into the concrete. More recently they found out that was at the viaduct down at Loch Nanoom. Ultimately though, that is just a big concrete bridge. What's more interesting is over here behind me. This is the Glenfinnan Monument. It commemorates Charles Edward Stuart raising his standard here on the 19th of August 1745, beginning the last doomed Jacobite campaign. He landed on Enniscay and rowed ashore at Annisig, just west of here. In fact, we've just been there. Some men from Clan Donald were waiting to meet him, but as he stood on the spot just down there, he must have wondered who was coming. It must have been quite something standing here just waiting for some kind of a sign. Must have been quite stressful, and it must have been a massive relief when they heard the skirl and drone of the pipes as Donald, Cameron, McPhee and MacDonald men arrived. When Charles was confident he had an army, McMaster of Glenaladale raised the standard. Charlie announced to the crowd that he claimed the British, not just the Scottish throne, in the name of his father, James. Then they drank brandies.
As we know, they lost the campaign at the Battle of Culloden on the 16th of April, 1746.
The monument down there was designed by James Gillespie Graham and built in 1815. It was paid for by Alexander MacDonald of Glenaladale, who'd inherited a lot of money and wanted to spend it. The words on the marble plaque read, "On this spot where Prince Charles Edward Stuart first raised his standard on the 19th day of August 1745, when he made the noble and gallant attempt to recover a throne lost by his ancestors. This column was erected by Alexander MacDonald Esquire of Glenaladale to commemorate the generous zeal, the undaunted bravery and the inviolable fidelity of his forefathers and the rest of those who fought and bled in that arduous and unfortunate enterprise. This pillar has now, alas, also become the monument of its amiable and accomplished founder, who before it was finished died in Edinburgh on the 4th day of January 1815 at the early age of 28 years. That's a lot of info to pack onto a marble plaque. The identity of the statue was debated for a long time, but when it was commissioned, it was as Bonnie Prince Charlie. Probably the best thing about the monument though is that you can climb it, although unfortunately not just now, because we couldn't get parked earlier on.
We'd missed the Jacobite Steam Train on the first way round, but Leo spotted a later service on his phone. So we climbed the hill, and what we saw wasn't quite what we expected. First, there was a fairly humdrum ScotRail train. And then there was this. The famous steam locomotive's decidedly diesely replacement.
Serves us right for buying into the hype.
Worth it for the views though.